What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about Black Panther #7 by John Ridley and Stefano Landini. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly why T'Challa is giving up the throne of Wakanda forever, and whether or not Storm and Black Panther can reconcile their relationship going forward after T'Challa's spying on her. And last but not least, why Wakanda's new hero hates Black Panther.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Last we left off, the Hattusarazi had basically assumed power over Wakanda. Prime Minister Folasade had basically given them the power, thinking that her and Akili were of one mind, when in fact they really weren't. Now, last video I kind of did a little bit of back and forth, trying to figure out how I felt exactly about Akili as a character, whether or not I felt he was capable of betraying T'Challa, especially after some particular story beats that we saw. There's a lot of him and Han going back and forth with Akili, and whether he was or was not on that Fox News BS, but I can confirm he is in fact on that Fox News BS. He does actually want to take over Wakanda. He does feel like neither Prime Minister Folasade or Black Panther are good for Wakanda, and he wants to turn Wakanda from what is otherwise a technological utopia into more of a police state. One of those situations where I kind of feel like the villain thinks that they're the hero of their own story, but in reality, they're probably doing things that are maybe worse than what, the people that they claim are the bad guys to them. Just know that Akili is, for all intents and purposes, he has taken Wakanda under what is essentially martial law. And this has put Black Panther in an actionable position. He is now having to work with people who otherwise wouldn't want to work with him. Of course, we know the Dora Milaje. They are really not into the idea of helping T'Challa just on good looks alone. We talked about in the previous video how the Dora have been misused and abused by T'Challa in the past. Their role in Wakanda was also, during the Christopher Priest run when they were introduced, was kind of a problematic role because they were just wives in training. They were potential women that he could take up as a wife. That and protecting him were their sole purposes. They felt like they were living their lives for a king that didn't live for them, that they were basically just being used. That's one of the reasons why they broke away from Wakanda during Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Panther run, and have been separate from the throne ever since, living in the Jabari lands as their own people. They also believed that Wakanda had failed its people, that they had left many people that didn't live within the Golden City. They left them to their own devices and felt that Wakandans as a whole, not just the ones who happened to live in the capital city itself, deserved better. They deserved real leadership, not just some king running off at the first chance to play superhero in the rest of the world. I'm not trying to say that's what T'Challa is, but that's what he felt like to them. And even based on some of the things T'Challa brings up in this issue, he would probably agree that what they believed was not that far from the truth. What actually galvanizes them into wanting to help T'Challa is a lot of kind words by Shuri, and maybe just a little bit of T'Challa's prostrating himself, laying out his sins bare, revealing that he does recognize he's done wrong. In his efforts to try and do good, he's often made bad calls. This is something that a lot of superheroes the likes of Black Panther aren't too quick to admit. A lot of people like to compare Black Panther to Batman because they are, in some ways, vaguely the same character. They're both people who come from wealth and power and money, and at the same time also have a responsibility, whether it's self-imposed or otherwise, to try and protect the people under their care. In the case of Batman, he charges himself with protecting Gotham City and the world as a whole, and Black Panther, his charge is to protect Wakanda, and he often does tend to try and protect the world as a whole. But one of the things they do share in common is that their overzealousness in trying to be prepared for every conceivable outcome can tend to put them at odds with other people. And the biggest difference here is that we're in DC's Batman rarely ever gets held to task for the problematic things that he's done. Yeah, sure, people call him out on it, but no one ever really holds his feet to the fire when he makes a bad call and reveals that he didn't trust the people around him. Even during Dark Knight's Metal, yeah, people were angry with him, but how long did they hold his feet to the fire because of what he allowed to happen. He literally unleashed an entire dark multiverse on the rest of the world and kept everyone at arm's length, thinking, no, I have to do it myself. T'Challa has done very similar things, and right now, his feet are being held to the fire by everyone around him, not just the Dora, but even Shuri and Storm for that matter. Even Prime Minister Folasade doesn't really want to have much to do with T'Challa now that she has been outed from power, thanks to her turning her back against the Tutsi and trying to galvanize the people of Wakanda to fight back against them. And it's in the middle of all of this where we discover that T'Challa is giving up the throne. The reason why everyone is banding together to try and help him is because the Dora don't want to help him just to put him back on the throne so he can mess everything up yet again. And Prime Minister Folasade doesn't want to help him, thinking that he'll just try and take back the power and turn Wakanda back into a monarchy. The reason why they're going to help him is because T'Challa is willing to give up the throne. He says once this all is over, he's not going to seek the throne. He's not going to seek power. Now, whether or not this is in relation to how he's going to deal with the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, which he still presides over, that's another story. But right now, Wakanda proper is, for all intents and purposes now, a democracy. And while lately they've been trying that, it hasn't been working because there have been inside and outside forces working against them. So whether or not they still try and go with the democratic experiment after this is another story altogether, or whether or not they realize they want to go back to being a monarchy, or maybe they'll let the people actually decide for the first time in a long time, if ever, what they want. Do they want a king, or do they want people to represent them? That's kind of what this whole arc with John Ridley has been about. On the slick, it's not been the main focus, because, I think a lot of what has been going on is we've been focusing on who are these assassins? What's up with these sleeper agents? Why are these assassins trying to kill them? What's up with the Hattusarazi? A lot of the democratic experiment side of the story kind of falls by the wayside if you're not really looking for it. So I am curious to see what they're going to do, but I think maybe they might find some happy medium. Maybe they might find a good middle ground in this, or at the very least, if T'Challa is going to be a part of Wakanda's democratic experiment, which he seemed very disinterested in issue number 1, maybe he's finally warmed up to it, and maybe he'll actually try to be more of an advocate for the people rather than trying to be their king. I talked a little bit about, his relationships with all these people and why they were both willing and unwilling to help him. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is what's up with his relationship with Storm. In previous issues, it was revealed that Black Panther was spying on Krakoa, as he was spying on everyone. It wasn't anything that he was specifically picking on, the mutants in Krakoa and Arakko and all that. No, it was one of those things where he was spying on everyone. He had spies across the entire globe, not just in America, and not even just on Krakoa. He had them in Latveria, he had them in Russia. I would even dare say he has some in other parts of the universe, considering that he has the intergalactic empire of Wakanda at his disposal. And we discovered that the Wakandan mutant Gentle was working for T'Challa on this level, spying on Krakoa, keeping an eye on Storm, and all the other comings and goings of mutants. And while we've learned that he didn't know everything, Gentle didn't tell him about mutant resurrection. T'Challa, we discovered he learned that after Ben Urich's expose writing about the immortal X-Men back in X-Men number 12 that came out about a week or two ago. So Black Panther found out the same time as everyone else. Gentle didn't give up all those secrets. He was mostly just giving T'Challa whatever information he felt was okay to give. But this has put a strain yet again on the relationship of Storm and Black Panther. I feel like the world just doesn't want them to be together. There are people in Marvel who do not want them to have any kind of happiness. During the events of AVX, it was revealed that they were pretty much giving up on their relationship. Ta-Nehisi Coates came back in about 2 or 3 years later and tried to put it back together, and it seemed like everything was back on track. And then everything with House of X pretty much ripped all that apart. And while it seemed like Al Ewing was trying to maybe get that, back on track, keep it all together, then ultimately we get to a point where no, that's not the case. John Ridley wants that relationship dissolved yet again. So right now, Storm is unwilling to give Black Panther another chance, at least not as a romantic partner. She explicitly states that she cannot forgive him for the things that he has done, the lies, the deception, the complete and total lack of trust in her. She just can't do it, that she will forever be his friend, but she basically says that they'll never, ever be romantically involved again, at least not in any serious manner. And who knows, they always say never, but I don't know, man, just the back and forth, the will they or won't they get back together thing, it's become it's become incredibly tiresome. It's actually my least favorite part of the entire current Black Panther run. I like pretty much everything else that's going on, but this is probably like the one area of John Ridley's Black Panther run where I'm just like, all right, whatever. But I get it. I know what they're trying to do. I know what John Ridley's, putting into play here. That was kind of the whole premise of his Black Panther run, is that he was going to lose friends, that he was going to turn some friends into enemies, enemies into friends, whatever, so on and so forth. That's all well and good. But while we're talking about people who aren't particularly fond of T'Challa, let's talk about our new hero, Tosin Oduye. Basically, the best way to look at Tosin is if Black Panther is Wakanda's favorite rapper, Tosin is like your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. He's that guy. We actually talked about Tosin in one of the previous videos for Black Panther number 3. This is a character that was introduced in the back end of that issue. What we got was a flash forward of things to come. While it seemed like this was something that was all happening all at once, this was a glimpse into a few issues ahead from Black Panther number 3, and now it's all coming to play. We talked about Tosin a little bit. Basically, what you need to know is that he comes from a group of people called the Marube. They're basically people who separated themselves from Wakanda as a whole, whereas Wakanda proper, they embraced vibranium and technology and trying to figure out ways to harness it, and the Marube feel like the Wakandans of the Golden City put too much value in vibranium. They put too much value into decadence and trying to see themselves as the cultural and technological elite of the world, to the point that they've started to look down on the people who don't have as much as they do. It's kind of one of those situations where I think when we as comic book readers think of Wakanda as a whole, we think of it as a perfect society. We think that, oh, there's nothing wrong. There's no classism in Wakanda. Surely not. This is a colonizer-free country, a country that was never colonized by the people that would normally institute those type of practices. And then we must remember that classism wasn't something that was invented by colonizers. Classism is something that's technically always been around. It's always the haves versus the have-nots, and that's what was happening here. And the Marube separated themselves from that. They decided to, instead of trying to harness the power of vibranium and the land around them, they decided to live with it, to try and channel it by working alongside it, not trying to manipulate it for their own ends. And in doing this, they kind of embraced, instead of science, more of a spiritualism when it came to vibranium. They're able to do things with it that you don't really see normal Wakandans do without some kind of technology to back it up. When we see Tosin, the glowing and everything that's happening on his body, what we would normally associate with Black Panther's suit, this is not a vibranium suit that Tosin is wearing. This is his skin. These are tattoos, vibranium tattoos, not that dissimilar from, at least in practice, what we've seen with the character Gentle, though his were more meant to keep his powers in check. These allow Tosin to channel the power of vibranium, using it in ways that I don't think we've really seen even Black Panther do on any kind of regular basis. Using a specialized Wakandan martial art that's specific to the Marube people, he uses that in tandem with the vibranium, able to channel it almost in the way of like what you would see from Danny Rand, the Iron Fist. He channels vibranium energy through his palms and his feet. He's able to enhance his strikes and do all kinds of crazy feats that we would normally associate with Black Panther when he's using his vibranium suit and the heart-shaped herb. Now, the Marube don't necessarily have access to the heart-shaped herb, so all of this is through just sheer force of will and channeling the power of vibranium through spiritual means. Now, as far as Tosin as a whole goes, I did mention earlier in the video that he hates Black Panther. Here's the thing you really gotta know about Tosin, is that yes, he is of the Marube. We don't know exactly when the Marube broke away from Wakanda, but all we know is that as far as Tosin is concerned, it was well before his time, and he feels the same way the rest of the Marube do. He has sat back and watched as Wakanda has grown more decadent, how they have brought war to the country during events like Infinity and Time Runs Out, so on and so forth. They've watched from the sidelines and just seen how T'Challa has done nothing but impose his will upon Wakanda and put it in harm's way to save the rest of the world. And not just T'Challa, he doesn't just hold T'Challa to task for this, he also holds characters like Eric Killmonger. He even points out that Eric Killmonger and T'Challa were two sides of the same coin, that T'Challa wanted to use vibranium to rule Wakanda, while Killmonger wanted to use vibranium to impose Wakanda's will on the rest of the world, and Tosin thinks that both men are incredibly wrong for that. He even says that his ancestors felt T'Challa and Killmonger were both misguided, if not evil. But Tosin, he heard Folasade's call. Tosin is a very interesting character to me because he does have an outside perspective that no one else seems to have in this. He wants to protect his people, and he does recognize that if the Hotutsurazzi are imposing their will upon Wakanda, they're gonna impose it on everyone living outside of it as well, and he's a grassroots guy of the Marube, and the only reason he's helping them is because he believes in what Prime Minister Folasade said about trying to get the people united once again, that if the few are allowed to dictate the freedoms of the many, that they'll never know true freedom again. He believed in that message, despite the fact that he lives in what is, for all intents and purposes, what he calls a mute zone, a place that is cut off from Wakanda proper. And despite that, he believes that he's more Wakandan than either T'Challa or Shuri. Not necessarily because of his spiritual beliefs either, but because he feels the Marube are always ready to do the right thing and not put the needs of the haves over the have-nots. He doesn't believe that that's what Wakanda is about, and he believes in a Wakanda for all, not just for some. Not too differently than what we talked about earlier with the Dora Milaje and why they walked away from the crown. But Tosin, I like him as a character. I do find it interesting that, he does wield this incredible power that you would normally associate with, T'Challa having the vibranium suit, but it does come at a price that when he does overload his powers, he has to take what is called a vibranium bath, which is interesting to Shuri because she doesn't understand how these people, the Marube, are able to do all of these fantastical things with vibranium outside of a laboratory. This actually mirrors a lot of what we saw in the Black Panther movie of 2018, where the Jabari separated themselves from Wakanda because they felt that Wakanda had relied too much on technology. The Marube are just kind of more of that. And while the Jabari of the MCU forsake technology, the Marube don't, and that's what makes them so much more interesting, that they're doing all of this just by living off the land. That's everything I wanted to talk about with Black Panther number 7. If you want to know what's been going on with Black Panther and the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, check out this video on the top left where I break down how T'Challa found an empire of Wakanda in the far-flung reaches of space. And if you want to know everything there is to know about the character Storm, check out this video on the bottom right and learn everything about one of the most powerful Omega-level mutants in X-Men history. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about Black Panther number 7, and what do you think about the new character of Tosin? Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.